Today we go into the applied part of Klein, how you apply Kleinian theory in therapy. What are the points you focus upon when the client comes to you? How do you analyze pathogenesis of a disorder? So if you take a look at DSM-5, and let us say you have about 150 to 175 disorders, of which, let's say, 125 are such where therapy can make a difference. And of them, you want to find psychoanalytic clauses in a Kleinian way, then where do you end up? So two important points in terms of pathogenesis from Kleinian theory point of view are object loss and object attack. And obviously, they are subparts of object relations. That is what Klein is all about, object relations. And object relations, you can have good object relations or not good object relations. Good object relations will lead to a healthy mind. He won't come to us. But those who don't have good object relations, they will be troubled. And if the trouble exceeds a limit, they will come to us. So when we look at people who are troubled and deeply troubled, so troubled that they could not manage it with milder interventions and had to come for professional help, especially in India, it's very difficult to get mild cases. We always get moderate and severe cases. Because when the disorder is mild, there are so many options to be accessed in India.
Entertained.
So for people who come to us, when we want to analyze the causation of what has happened to them in Kleinian terms, two very important parts are object loss and object attack. Within the Kleinian framework, these are like sub areas by themselves. Like if you just talk of object loss, there is a thick volume of papers only on loss. It's a worth reading thing. The title is a very old book, Essential Papers in Object Loss, which has compilation of some of the best papers in the area of loss. So object loss is very important in Kleinian pathogenesis. A range of disorders come out of object loss. One way of looking at all personality disorders is to look at them arising out of early life object loss. And that gives us a very different idea of personality disorders. That they are all arising from the same event, and each person is trying differently to respond to the same kind of trauma. And that may be one of the reasons that we always find, not always, but usually we find mixed personality disorders. You have one presenting major personality disorder in the front. And when you go into therapy, you realize that other disorders are hiding behind it in minor intensity, in milder forms. So it's very rare to find only one personality disorder. Usually, if we do therapy long enough, we find some other personality disorder in a minor form always along with it. And that may be because they are probably arising from the same root. This is one belief. Not the only belief, but one belief. And that is object loss. So object loss is very important. We'll go in details in a moment. Second is object attack. that when you have attacking objects, and attacks may be covert or overt. Covert attacks are easy to remember. Overt attacks are very difficult to make out. Patients come to us and
उलट
say,
ना सर
sorry?
उलटा ना सर उलटा overt are easy to remember covert are difficult to
Correct, correct.
yeah.
I made a mistake here.
नहीं सर
Overt are easy to remember. Covert are difficult to make out. Because
yes
the covert are so silent, so insidious, so hidden, so subterfuged that patients come to us and say, my parents never touched me, never slapped me once,
yes
and always looked upon me. How do I have so much of rage towards my parents? Because everything was so covert, so subtle, so insidious. So there are overt object attacks and covert object attacks. These are very important core problems in the mind in the Kleinian framework, the core causes of pathology. Each of the points will actually lead to 4 to 5. In fact, object loss, if you just look at DSM, you will at least find 15 disorders where object loss is at the root. You will at least find 10 disorders where object attack is at the root. Similarly, the split open. You will find the split open at the root from generalized anxiety disorder to delusion of persecution. From very simple anxiety to complicated schizophrenia. You will find at the root the same phenomena of the split being open. Object unpredictability. Very important from bipolar and borderline point of view. Also very important from autism point of view. That the object is unpredictable. You never know when it is with you or you're going to lose it. You never know when it will love you or attack you. And the child is in perpetual guessing. And what it develops is to read the mind of the other and please him unconsciously. So they are very good unconscious mind readers. Because there is no way out to save oneself except this. That the unpredictable parent has to be deciphered unconsciously and pleased in order to have a preventive against attack. So they are very good human readers and they read very subtle signs of abandonment or attack. Often you may not know that this is building up in you and they will know. That you are slowly building up rage towards the person and after 2 or 3 days you are going to be angry. You may not know it, but he will know it. That the preparation has started and attack is going to come. Because this is his super specialization. As a child, he did his DM in object unpredictability. Search for omnipotence. This is very important in all the personality disorders, as well as in addiction, as well as in schizophrenia. The search for omnipotence, and this will undergo vicissitudes. In narcissism, it's very clear. Like in dependence, is literally clear that the dependent person is searching for an omnipotent person. In narcissism, the search undergoes a vicissitude. That he is in search of some object which is omnipotent, and he turns it back on oneself to say, I am omnipotent. In avoidant or paranoid, these things are projected onto the other. That the other is omnipotent but attacking. He is not a benign omnipotent. He is a malignant omnipotent. Another point that is very important in Kleinian theory at its core is internalization of a good, reliable, stable object. In most cases, this we will find has not happened and the person is sick. And this is one of the core measures to be done in therapy. That how do you facilitate internalization of a good, reliable, stable object? Ironically, the Kleinian theory is one of the least congruent theories to make it happen.
Why?
Because it is a theory which is based upon very hard interpretation and work in transference. Like the Kleinian technique is not easy to take. For example, let us say you go to Freudian therapy for 3 months and you have a complete one part of experience. Then you go to Kleinian therapy for 3 months. And that way you go for all the therapies for 3 months. And then if you have to do a comparative evaluation from standpoint of how easy or how difficult it is for you as a person to take it, you will realize ISTDP and Kleinian therapy is one of the most difficult to take. Because the interpretations and the challenge that actually make it very, very difficult to bear. So Kleinian therapy operates largely in transference, with interpretations not being held back, and often the transference converted into here and now. So that's a very difficult therapy to take. And internalization of a good, reliable, stable object, that really calls for a safe space. Yeah.
By saying Kleinian therapy is closer to Earhart training, or Earhart training is actually Kleinian kind of even poetic interpretations are given upfront, and you deprive the client of uh, everything except bare physiological needs for 48 hours, 72 hours, things like that, and give and accuse him of the worst allegations. And if he comes out, then he comes out better equipped. And if your choice for the therapy was wrong, then or the choice for the kind of therapy you chose, their heart seminar training, then the person can break down actually.
Which is that therapy?
ERHARDT, Earhart Seminar Training.
Okay.
EST was olden in our books. I don't know if it is valid now.
So you are referring to one of the difficult to take therapies.
Yes.
So
And one more doubt I had is, but it's not a doubt actually, but what you said is it actually means that all therapists, as a therapist, we are trying to be good, reliable, stable object for the patient, and then the patient will generalize it to other world and learn how to deal with them. Will that be right if you say that?
yes, because two things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
The good, reliable, stable object which is internalized,
Mm-hmm.
that will become the center for
Mm-hmm.
positivity, resilience, fortitude, and belief in one's strength. And those factors then will radiate or be active in their dealing with the world. That is one. Second, in the internal world, once the good, reliable, stable object is internalized, then the fear of attack of the bad object and the anxiety which is catastrophic, that goes down. So that becomes the sort of, if you look at in a generic way, if you say there is a healthy part of the psyche and a non-healthy part of the psyche, this will power up the healthy part of the psyche.
Fantastic.
So that is very, very important. Now, for doing this, therapies which are good in holding, which are providing safety, which are not going much in interpretation, which are more supportive, they are far better equipped to facilitate this. And the Kleinian therapy, the ISTDP or heart seminar that you referred to, right, they are based upon challenge, confrontation, and trials. They are not based upon safety and holding. So the input person has to have a particular kind of ego strength to really be compatible with that therapy. And most people who come to us don't have that ego strength. So the irony is that the therapy which calls this as one of the central measures for healing itself is not geared towards this. The Kohutian therapy is much better geared towards this. And that's one of the reasons why, as Bion says, only if the therapist can hold back his brilliance, the client will say what he was about to say.
Please, I did not understand it completely. If the therapist withhold his brilliance, then the client will say what he was about to say.
Usually we are busy proving our brilliance by our giving our interpretations. It's an act of,
sorry.
It's an
Otherwise, they feel that you were not doing anything. You were just listening to me. So we have to prove.
That is one part. Right?
Yeah.
That we are anxious that if we don't do anything, what will the client think?
Yes.
And
they don't like to pay.
And will he leave me and go to somebody else? And then I will be left with low income, a very bad name in the society professionally. And I will have my own anxiety to deal with when I don't have income. So that's one of the anxieties in the mind of the therapist. So that is one part. But the second part is we do it out of our own narcissism and exhibitionism. That we can't hold back our brilliance. We have to exhibit our narcissism. And that is where Bion says, only if the therapist could hold back his brilliance, the client will say what he was about to say. So that kind of approach is far more suited to internalization of a good, reliable, stable object. And here, the unconscious part plays a very big role. Like, if you know the theory, if you know to make interpretations, but you are holding it back because you believe that's a better approach, unconsciously you will be very confident, and that unconscious confidence will be felt by the client. But if you do the same thing because you don't know how to make interpretations, and you don't say anything, not because you think it's a better way, but because there's nothing else you can do because you don't know anything, then there will be a hollowness and anxiety inside of you, which will be automatically felt by the client. And therefore, the two states are very different. When you know you are experienced and you hold back because you think it's a better option, and you are doing what is called active containment. Even if you make 3 interpretations in an hour, clients don't leave you. In fact, the clients tell you this was a very good session.
Yeah.
So,
sorry.
Please.
Internalization, they said, comes in 3 forms, no? The defenses. Internalization also comes as a primitive defense, introjection as an immature defense, and identification as a neurotic defense.
Right. So, one way to understand this is that these are different ways of taking in. That something from outside, which is experienced, is taken in some way. Now, the way it is taken in depends on the stage of development. Like very early in life, when everything is literal, the metaphorization of mind is yet to happen. It is incorporation. You literally take the object as it is. Later on, it is internalization. Or you can say after incorporation, it is introjection. Then it is internalization. And after internalization happens, identification happens. And that is where the internalization becomes permanent. Otherwise, internalization has a shelf life. And very few people will be able to do that kind of identification and internalization that they won't need anybody else and they are free from loneliness. So by and large, for most of us, internalization and identification are partial. And therefore, when without people, very soon we feel lonely. Because in the inner world, they have not been assimilated enough. That we may have experienced people for 50 years, 60 years, but the assimilation inside has not happened completely. Otherwise, we would be free from loneliness. Because in the inner world, they will always be there. And that is what happens when somebody goes to Himalayas and sits in a cave. That unless that assimilation has not happened, you cannot sit in a cave for 21 days all alone and come out healthy. So, and therefore, idol therapy is a very good way of internalization. That if you had difficult experiences with a female object, you can have a female idol and try to correct it. If you find it very difficult to be with an adult, you can have an idol in the child form. And when you are with something, the automatic process of attachment and internalization happens. That when you are with something, automatically the attachment first happens and internalization happens then. And as we saw before, envy, attack, and loss are the stumbling blocks to internalization. That usually we don't feel safe enough to internalize. Although objects are available around us, we either don't find them good enough or safe enough. So there are two criteria through which they have to go through. They have to be good enough and then they have to be safe enough. And before doing this, clients test you out. Are you safe enough? So what they will do is they will put anger into you by projective identification, irritation into you, and see if you can hold it or you act it out. If you act it out, they know you are not a safe object. So they will test you out in terms of loss and attack. That are you a safe object? And only then they will allow unconsciously they will allow themselves to internalize. So anybody who has faced loss or attack in early life will always test out the therapist. And if it is a contra-gender thing, then seduction can be a way of testing. Okay, do you fall for it or can you hold it?
Wonderful.
So it's a safety test for the therapist. And only then they will internalize.
One such lady, she's also a psychiatrist, and she met me after several years, and we attended a 1.5 day workshop by Dr. Salman Akhtar in Mumbai. And let me share very confidentially with you. And after that, she told me that I am grateful to you and I harassed you unnecessarily because I did not fall for whatever.
Correct.
Looks. I'm lucky, not that I was talented or capable, but some people, perhaps I might have experienced loss and attack in very early childhood, and I learned the ways, like you were mentioning, that You have to learn to overcome or survive despite object unpredictability or search for omnipotence restricted to realistic things. And uh, I think internalization becomes possible when you learn. It was a very difficult process. I think it continued even until MD, that what to learn from whom, what to take and what to reject in whichever person you see. Otherwise, there are all kinds of objects around.
Correct.
Mhm.
And every object is a strange mixture of different things.
Yes. Mhm. It's a very joyous lecture. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but it is very joyous for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
So this internalization and idol therapy are very intimately tied,
But that is different from Vipassana, right? Otherwise, they say go without any object in Vipassana.
because there
Mm.
the technique is not of internalization.
Okay.
The technique is of catharsis by observation.
Uh-huh.
And you will find that when the internalization has not adequately happened, that technique will not work beyond a point. And that is one of the troubles of not having idols or not having gurus.
Mhm.
That the group which has internalization trouble needs this. If internalization trouble is not there, then of course you can have other methods based upon whatever suits you and the problem and the strength of the method. But internalization, when it is a problem, then what happens is that at some point you will get stuck in a method which is not good for internalization. So there what will happen is that if you get into Vipassana kind of meditation, then it is very good for integration and catharsis in a slow way. It's also very good for self-knowledge and insight. But if internalization trouble has happened, then at some point you will have to get out of it, go into some method which is good for internalization and come back to that method. This is what often happens in spirituality. That somebody is traveling in one particular path, then he reaches the dead end, he goes to some other path, complements what this path cannot do and comes back. So internalization is a very important point. Uh, like if you look at small children, you can see very distinctly these definitions. Like he can say, ki, when the mother goes out of room, the mother I see inside of me, mother is inside of me. Which means literally he has incorporated the mother inside. Then one can see the introjection, that the child projects something of his own onto the mother, and the mother as she is, and the two combined are internalized. That the object is not taken in literally. The projections are happening on the object, and then the combined object, which is a combination of reality and our projection, is taken in. Then you are free of projection and you take the mother in internalization. And the child says, don't do this. The mother will say it is wrong. And after that identification happens, and now the child will say this is wrong. He will not say, mother will say this is wrong. Now the child will say this is wrong. Because what the mother used to say, now it is fused with himself. Now it's a part of him. He has identified with it. So now the moral system has become his own. So now he does not say mother or father will say no. Now he says this is wrong. Yeah, you're saying something.
You wake out immediately. I found myself talking to myself at times loudly in the last several weeks, and that somehow gives me solace. I make fun of myself. And even with students around or patients around, I also don't find anything wrong in it, and I feel more relaxed. Uh,
It's a
I-
very good way of self-healing.
the artifice is falling away.
I can give you two examples
Yes, sir.
and one very good quotation.
Hmm.
Uh, One is Carl Jung.
Hmm.
He had extensive talks with parts of himself when he was going the tumultuous period of what he calls the Nekia.
What he calls?
Nekia, Nekiya. Nekia is a Jungian concept where
Hmm.
one undergoes a severe psychological crisis and comes out of it. And then he feels very healthy, wholesome. He feels he has got a purpose of life and he wants to do something for the world. So he comes out very wholesome. And that psychological crisis, which is sort of recreating the inner personality, even as it is healing, that he calls as Nekia, the tribulations before health and wholesomeness. So he underwent this Nekia for almost 7 years, which in India we will call Sadesati. So Jung underwent Sadesati, what he called Nekia, and Freud also underwent the same Sadesati, what he calls the period of splendid isolation. And both of them, while they were completely deep inside of them, discovered the core principles of their theory during their tumultuous time. So Freud deeply analyzed himself, his own dreams, his own Oedipus, and so on. Jung had these talks, and one of the favorite parts of himself, which he used to talk with, was what he used to call the old wise man.
Old wise man.
Similarly, recently I had a patient uh, who used to have panic, and in the course of therapy, he started developing an image of himself and talking to it. So now there is the person X who has panic, and obviously in any panic, irrationality is involved. Like if you get panic when the lift door closes, then there's something irrational involved. That the irrational part of you overwhelms the rational part of you. So now he has two people. He is himself and he has the rational part of himself, the X. So he is X and rational X. So X talks to rational X. Okay, why am I feeling so panic? And rational X tells him what any sane person will tell him. Okay, what is there to fear? Everyone is going through the lift. Nothing is happening to anyone. And you have been it through so many times. What has happened to you? Why are you panicking? So this self-talk with a rational version of oneself is giving him a lot of relief in the same situations which earlier used to cause panic. Yes, you're saying something.
This I used to write when I got admission into first MBBS. I was the last to get admitted, and within 1 week the terminal started, and we had semester system and all that. So the long and short of it is there was extreme panic, and if I were more mature and resourceful, I would have gone to psychiatrist, but I did not. And then I used to write on the last page of my book this dialogue to myself, and that helped me come out. And then after gaining confidence, because I saw that only 4 people passed in the first terminal examination and I got 40%, though not 50. 50 were required for passing. I said, okay, 1 week study, I get 40%, I am passable. And then there was subsequent. So writing to oneself, yes, the dialogue, and absolutely.
Like you can title this conversation as Conversations with a Wise Man. And the wise man is nobody but a wise part of yourself.
Yes, yes.
Okay, one
Yes.
part of us is panicking, anxious, and so on. And there's a
Mm.
wise part of us who can give us all the counsel we need. Everyone
The
has.
recent,
We just don't
the
access
recent,
that wise part of us.
yes, the recent conversations I have are humoring myself about my usual faults. वासुदेव किती आळस करायचा कामाला लागा आता तुम्ही हळूहळू करणार आयुष्यभर तुम्हारे तो आधे पैर खबर मिळते and that is what actually points out faults in a joking way and motivates me to work further.
Correct. It's a very good way
Yes, sir. Thank you.
because humor rounds off the edges.
Yes.
It makes the bitter pill palatable.
Yes, sir. Humor makes reality bearable.
Correct. Correct. There is a very good statement by Sri Aurobindo on this.
Uh-huh.
He says, in one of those rare moments
Mm-hmm.
when the inner lamps are lit
Mm-hmm.
and life's cherished guests are kept outside, our spirit sits alone and talks to its gulfs. Talks to its gulfs. Gulf.
U- GULF, Gulfs.
GULFS.
Gulfs. Mhm.
Gulf of Hormuz.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so those are very, in a way, from an inner development point of view, very precious moments.
Keep the cherished guests outside and
The
uh,
whole statement is, in some of those rare moments when the inner lamps are lit and life's cherished guests are kept outside, our spirit sits alone and talks to its gulfs. So you have the luxury and the wisdom of really doing the kind of exercise that Jung used to do, of
yes,
talking to the old wise man. He used to call it, he used to give it a name, Philemon. So obviously it was a part of him projected out. Not projected,
available.
yeah, not in the hallucinatory sense, but in an ideational sense.
Yes, great.
One more element that is very core at Klein's conceptualization of pathology is envy. And envy is pervasive across the psychic world. And one of the things that does not allow internalization of a good, reliable, stable object early in life is envy. That the psyche produces in many people, not everyone, envy of the good breast. And once you have envy, there is resistance and destruction, attack. You don't internalize what you envy. You resist it, you fight it, you attack it. You want to destroy it. And nature has put it in us partly for competition, that we don't become a race of contented people, that we keep envying each other and you always are in competition. So Immanuel Kant says very good statement. He says, man wants concord and nature wants discord. Nature does not want you to be a community of good shepherds who are all content. Nature wants you to be not contented. Forever, he uses a good word. He says, forever divinely discontent.
Forever demand the discontent.
So envy is
Correct.
one of the tools of evolution.
Perhaps the statement by Byron, nature is red in its claw and tooth.
Nature is,
RED
ha,
in its claw and tooth
correct.
with all the blood that it is.
So envy is very important to be healed in Kleinian therapy. I don't think in any other therapy envy gets this kind of importance. It's a very distinctly Kleinian concept.
I gather the anger mentioned in the first line, anxiety, pain, and anger. Anger on object loss perhaps reflects or gives rise to entitlement. Otherwise, how do I explain anger when I'm feeling lonely, helpless, sad?
We have
Where
to
do I get strength to feel anger?
So we have to go back to the object loss phenomena. How does object
Uh-huh,
loss phenomena happen?
uh-huh,
Let's go back to it. It's very important. In fact,
mhm,
I have created a model of personality disorder only on
uh-huh,
the basis of object loss.
uh-huh.
So let us go back to the object loss phenomena.
Okay.
Step one, the child has the good breast. The child is very happy.
Mhm, mhm,
Fine.
mhm,
Step two, the breast is not there and the child is hungry.
mhm,
Step three, the child hallucinates the breast. And even
mhm.
though the breast is not there, the mouth is making suckling movements.
Yes.
Step
Mhm,
four, the child realizes fantasy will not work because he wants the real breast.
mhm,
Hunger will not go by fantasy.
mhm,
So he realizes that I have to have a real breast, good breast again. But he cannot understand the concept of absence. So he believes, step six, that a bad breast is present because he cannot understand the concept of absence. Step seven, he gathers all his anger and attacks the bad breast. Step 8, he feels powerless because nothing is happening. Step 9, sadness comes in. Okay, it's no longer with me. It's gone. Step 10, he feels that I must not be good enough for it to leave me. Why has he left me? What did I do wrong? Maybe I am not good enough and therefore it has left me. Maybe I did not please it enough and in future I will make sure that I do it. I don't want to experience this again. Step 7, I am not good enough comes in, inferiority comes in. Sorry, step 7, step 7, anxiety comes in. That after the sadness part is done, I am not good enough is done, or even may not be done, but the fear comes in, okay, now the bad breast will attack me. So the anxiety comes in. So there is anger, there is sadness, there is anxiety, anger, powerlessness, sadness, anxiety that the attack will now come, helplessness that I cannot save myself and nobody is coming to save me. Not only I am powerless, but no powerful person is coming to save me. So the powerlessness now turns into helplessness, which is worse. That not only I am powerless, but nobody in power is going to come to help. And then the inferiority comes. That I can't even save, not only I cannot have the good breast by my power, I can't even save myself from attack. And I am not even good enough that anyone will come to save me. So then inferiority comes in. So all these are outcomes of loss. And they are very intense. And they create a state which is unbearable. So what happens is, it is like you are going on a road and suddenly object loss happens and you are down in the valley. And in the valley, what is there? These feelings of anger, powerlessness, sadness, anxiety, paranoia, guilt and shame, inferiority, and they are unbearable. So what does the child do? The defenses have to operate and get you out of it because there is no other way of getting out of it. So what happens is that defenses operate and some other position is taken in order to manage this valley state, which is unbearable. And what defenses are used determines the type of personality disorder. If reaction formation is used, you jump from the valley to the mountain top. And you proclaim, I don't need anybody. I am all good. So to each of the valley state emotion, an opposite emotion is created on the valley top. That in the valley, you have extreme inferiority. On the mountain top, you feel you are celestial. In the valley, you feel you badly need somebody and nobody is there. On the mountain top, you say, I am self-sufficient. I don't need anybody. In the valley, you feel sadness. You give a manic defense. And on the mountain top, you are always on a silent micro-hypomanic high. In the valley, you feel I am not good enough. On the mountain top, you say, I am 10 out of 10. I am omnipotent. I am better than everybody else. In the valley, you feel inferiority. On the mountain top, you feel superiority. In the valley, you feel helpless. On the mountain top, you feel all resourceful who can help others. So every emotion in the valley is acted upon by a defense. And what kind of defenses are introduced, that determines what personality disorder you will be left with. In case of personality disorders, you can move from the valley also into psychosis. But if you move into personality disorder, then the dependent will accept it, the valley state. He will not use reaction formation defenses like the narcissist, but he will use defenses to say, he will repress everything and he will come up with a proposition that I will find somebody omnipotent to save me. I will not become omnipotent like the narcissist. And I will please him. I will dismiss myself and prioritize him so that I don't have to face the valley state ever again. And whenever a dependent loses an omnipotent person, he is desperate for another omnipotent person to fill the vacancy, because without that, the valley state activates, which is unbearable. Now, if the dependent decides, okay, I am going to face the valley state fair and square and work through it, then of course he will be free from the cycle. If the narcissist decides, I will work through the valley state, he will be free from his pathology. Histrionic gives a different pathology. In order to get out of the valley state, the histrionic says, I need somebody omnipotent. I cannot be omnipotent. But the dependent is more assured than the histrionic. The dependent feels, if I please somebody, it is okay. The histrionic says, pleasing is just not enough. I have to do something dramatic to get him interested.
Seduce, actually.
And what he does is pleasing, dramatization, and seduction. So the pleasing part goes into obedience. So the histrionics usually are very obedient. So it's a combination of obedience, dramatization, and seduction. So this is one way to look at loss, that loss involves a series of emotions. And every time loss happens, this kind of states what passes through. And often they link up with earlier losses. And therefore, the accumulated strength of difficult emotions is felt. That you are not feeling something on a standalone basis. You are feeling something, linking it to the past. That is where the power doubles. And that is where you see that many people, if you look at precipitating causes, they are almost negligible. That why should a precipitating cause, which is so minor, cause such an upheaval? Because the precipitating cause on a standalone basis is very weak, but it links up with all the past material. That is where it becomes so capable of precipitating something difficult. And one of the cognitive tools, therefore, is to ask the person to respond to an event on a standalone basis. That you experienced X. Now, why are you responding to it disproportionately? What would be the standalone response to this? Even if it's disproportionate. So the standalone always will be much milder compared to an accumulated response where the small thing becomes a last straw on the camel's back. So object loss is very, very important, and the series of emotions are associated with object loss. Similarly, series of emotions are associated with object attack. Attack always leads to, why did you do this to me? I am not being understood. I am powerless. I want to take revenge. I feel guilty about taking revenge. There is sadness associated with that trauma. And the memory of it always creates anxiety. And often the rage involved is displaced onto innocent people. So there is a range of things that happens with attack and a range of things which happens with loss. So you can have narcissism out of object loss. You can have dependence. You can have histrionicity, a variety of things rooted in the phenomena of object loss. Similarly, you can have variety of things rooted in object attack. It can range from panic, where you remember the rage towards somebody, and as the rage comes up, you get afraid of your own rage coming out and you have a panic. So in panic situations, we see panic of two types. Panic which is based upon catastrophic thinking, and panic which is based upon difficult emotions coming up. And there, that is based upon signal anxiety, not anticipatory anxiety. Catastrophic thinking will produce anticipatory anxiety, which will create panic. And emotions coming up will produce signal anxiety, which will create panic. So, out of fear of attack, you may develop panic, or out of your own rage in response to attack, you may have rage coming up and again you have panic. So you can have a variety of disorders rooted in loss, attack, split open, unpredictability, omnipotence, internalization of a good, reliable, stable object, and envy. If you put this together, you can go into pathogenesis of not less than 60 to 75 disorders of DSM-5. That the symptoms may be different. They may be clustered into different disorders, but the psychic root will be this. So let us go deeper now into loss and attack. Early life loss can be real or perceived. In case of orphans, it's a real loss. In case of death of a person, it's real loss. In case of divorce, it's a real loss. But most of us have perceived losses. That the mother is not available for a few hours or a few days. We think it is abandonment, and even when the mother comes back, the abandonment is not reversed. That core still remains. Later corrective experiences are not able to correct it. So it's very important whether the loss is real or perceived. It is also important when does the loss happen. Earlier it happens, the worse it is. And if you talk of loss and attack, and unless you go into very extreme attacks, put aside extreme attacks. If you put aside extreme attacks, then between loss and attack, loss is worse. It creates a lot of fragility in the constitution. Ego strength becomes very low. If early life one has experienced object loss, it's very difficult to have a high ego strength. Some people do, but most of us have difficulty.
Have a, what emotionality you said, sir?
Good ego strength.
Good.
Usually one is fragile. One is not the tough type who can face difficult, stressful situations. One person used to divide human beings into three: the rabbit, the horse, and the stone, based upon the ego strength. Equally important is that when the event of loss happened, when did it happen? That is one. Earlier the worse. Second important part is, before the loss happened, what happened? So let us say object loss was experienced at 3 months of age. Let us say somebody had a working mother and the mother took leave when she conceived. And after the birth, she was at home for 3 months and she gave very good experience to the child. And then she started working after 3 months and the child experienced abandonment. Now the child experienced object loss at 3 months. Very severe object loss because the mother was away the whole day. This is not like a housewife who is away for 3 hours. This is like being away every day the whole day. It's a very severe object loss. But before the object loss happened, the child had experienced very good 3 months with the mother. So this child will not go into psychosis. At best, he will go into personality disorder. Because before the loss happened, the good part of the personality already had a nucleus built up. But let us say a child never had good experiences and the loss happens at 3 months, very likely he will go into psychosis. So the good experiences of early life, they are slowly taking you away from schizophrenia. 3 months of good experience, personality disorder. 6 months of good experience, even out of personality disorder, maybe something more episodic. That kind of thing. That more and more good experience you have, more and more you are away from the worst. And you move from severe to the mild. Another important aspect is what happens after the loss happens. Let us say you experience a loss at 4 months of age. And for 4 months, you were given a very good treatment. And at 4 months of age, some event of loss happens. For a week, the mother is not available, or for 2 days, the mother is not available. And again, the mother is available all your life. Then what happens is the pre and post good experiences are not able to undo the trauma of loss, but they are able to soften it. That the person has, let us say, dependence, but the person will also develop a lot of narcissism. It will be a mixed personality disorder because he is narcissistically brought up as a male child in a very conservative family. So he will be given narcissistic treatment, narcissistic gratification, And he will not develop only dependent personality, he will have a mixed thing. The front will be a narcissistic front and deep inside will be dependence. And he will be dealing with the world out of that front. But when the front develops some cracks, because a narcissistic front, a narcissistic position always needs fuel to keep up its inflation. A narcissistic ego is an inflated ego. It's like a balloon. And the balloon always needs fuel to pump it up. And when the fuel is not coming, the balloon will start collapsing, and that creates a crisis. So the person who has both, who experienced loss and dependence, but before the loss had very good narcissistic gratifying experience, after the loss also had narcissistic gratifying experience. Now he has a mixed personality disorder where the front is narcissistic and dependence is in the rear. And only when the front is developed some cracks, that the fuel is no longer being provided, that the inner dependence activates, and suddenly the person loses all the confidence. A person who appears so confident, who creates businesses out of the scratch, suddenly in the middle ages develops a loss of confidence, develops catastrophic thinking, because the narcissistic front is cracking and is falling into the dependent front, dependent back, rear. And therefore, for such a patient, it is better to re-establish the narcissistic front by finding new sources of fuel rather than going into that early life event and trying to heal it, which will take years. So here we see the post-trauma experience is also very important. So when does the loss happen? Before the loss, what happened? After the loss, what happened? All combined create the outcomes of loss. So the pathological outcomes of loss depend upon, number one, when does the loss happen? Two, how intense is the loss? Like, is the loss for 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks? So when does the loss happen? How intense is the loss? Before the loss, what happened? After the loss, what happened? And the constitution of the person. These 5 together will decide what will be the outcome of that loss. Will it just be some anxiety, some not be sure, a pre-stage of a personality disorder, or a personality disorder, or a psychotic thing? So losses can be therefore classified into mild, moderate, or severe. They can also be classified into one-time or repeated. Repeated loss will produce a very different outcome compared to a one-time loss. Usually, repeated loss will lead to disappointment repeated and lead to resignation, and ultimately lead to isolation of affect. Because every time a loss happens, you experience so much affect that the mind decides to keep all the affects locked up. I don't want to access them at all. So repeated loss is very likely to lead to isolation of affect. And if it happens in an ongoing psychosis, it will lead to a mask-like face, blunted face. But if it happens in the context of personality disorder, you will not see a mask-like face, but you will hear a complaint, I just don't feel anything. So it's not the psychotic blunting, but a neurotic isolation of affect. Psychotic blunting is far worse. And neurotic isolation of affect can easily be overcome by training oneself to get in touch with feelings. And one of the good ways is to look at movies. Because a person who is facing isolation of affect will not go to see movies or television serials or cricket match, anything that excites emotions. So just to make him go to these places is a very salutary thing for him. Should we break for a cup of tea for 10 minutes?
Thank you.
An important part of object loss is constitutional. How you respond to loss.
Mhm.
So Klein places great emphasis on the constitution because in her theory, the core events which determine pathology, they are happening so early in life that environment really doesn't have a chance to really make its impact. It's too early for environment. I mean, environment needs time to make its impact. So the earlier you go in terms of age, and you say, if you say first 10 years of life are important to determine pathology, then you have pretty long time for environment to act. If you say first 5 years, environment still can act. But if you say first 6 months, first 8 months, environment really doesn't have a chance. So Klein lays a great deal of emphasis on constitution, which determines our response to object loss. That two children facing the same loss may not end up with the same trauma. From an Indian point of view, we will talk in terms of karma. That the constitution is nothing but an outcome of karma. Interesting part is people have tried to study intergenerational loss in mice. And it seems that there is an intergenerational transmission of trauma. And if there is intergenerational transmission of trauma, then it's quite likely that there is intergenerational transmission of loss and attack both. And that may well be the next element of the transpersonal. That the psyche is not necessarily personal. There are suprapersonal elements. Like Jung's concept of the collective unconscious is suprapersonal element. It is beyond the individual. So when we say the psyche is personal, it means the individual's constitution and environment, that's all there is to determine pathology or health. But once we bring in transpersonal, there's something which is not personal but still affecting the psyche, then you can talk about the reincarnational element. You can talk about the karmic element. You can talk about intergenerational transmission of trauma. You can talk about the collective unconscious of Jung. You can talk about the influence of spirits. All of these are transpersonal elements beyond the person. So the transpersonal has been developing for the last 50 years very slowly because the mainstream was against the transpersonal, because it disturbs the framework of reality that we have in the sense of modernity. But we see the transpersonal gaining ground over the last so many years. So even if you bring, for example, the cultural element into trauma, it's a transpersonal thing. It is beyond the individual and the family. Lacan's concept of the big other is a transpersonal concept. So the question is, can the loss be addressed? Can a good object be found? It's not an easy question to answer. Conceptually, yes. Can the loss be addressed? Yes. Can a good object be found? Yes. But it's not easy. There is some sense of compatibility and some sense of safety which has to be there for an object to be felt good and safe enough to be internalized, and the loss is overcome. Take an example of Wilfred Bion, one of the great theorists in psychoanalysis. After two therapists and one wife, it was with his second wife that he could actually feel safe to really discuss and heal the deepest part of himself. Which means there is something related to the person as much as to the technique, that if the patient finds the therapist good and safe enough, it is possible. But it is not easy. Most patients hold back some part of themselves, doesn't matter how long the therapy goes. And unless that comes to a complete trust and complete abandon, that loss cannot be fulfilled. Because at a deeper level, the continuation of the loss is a choice. That it is not a situation that you don't have good objects around you to internalize. It is just that once bitten, twice shy. You don't want to risk attachment. So you don't find people who are good enough, number one, and you don't find people who are safe enough, number two. And two is more important than one.
What was the first one, sir?
Good enough. Second, safe enough, and safe enough is more important than good enough. And often, because one does not feel safe enough, one finds faults with people so that one can reject them. Because if you don't find fault, then the question is of closeness and you are terrified of it. So one is stuck in a situation, I want closeness, I don't want closeness. I want the other, I don't want the other. I want internalization, I will not internalize. I want to heal, but I will not go into the process of healing. It's too anxiety provoking. Some losses can be so deep that all that they released inside may perhaps never come out. I use a very popular statement for it. It says, some stories can never be told. There is a lecture of mine on my channel with the same title. Some stories can never be told. So this is about loss. Now let us go into attack. Sorry.
In the book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Title?
Outliers. He quotes a quote which says, cultural legacy casts long historical shadows.
True.
In a psychological experiment, they showed that originally the place from the people migrated into the US 400 years ago still shows in the behavior of the students of psychology, and a nice experiment they have given, how they react is different physiologically. So that is, I will search for that paper and find out.
It's a very good example of intergenerational transmission of psychological material.
Yes. And instead of genes, it is memes.
Correct.
Yes, sir. So
this is means, but there is also genes. Because in the mice experiments, it was genes.
Genes.
So what we see is that genes and means both are colluding for intergenerational transmission of psychological material. And you can see them even in case of people who migrated from India to Australia or Guyana. One famous author from the Caribbean was V.S. Naipaul.
Yeah.
And he was always in search of his Indian Hindu roots. And he is a Nobel Prize winner in literature. But you can see his writings and what he saw in the Hindus in the Caribbeans. So you can see that the shadow of history, the shadow of history on human mind. There's a
I,
transpersonal element.
I have a lady, British by birth, married here with an Indian Punekar and living here for 40, 50 years. And she still dreams occasionally that she's taking an auto rickshaw from Pune and driving on she's a passenger searching on the lanes of London, looking out for her home.
Correct.
Recurrent dream in search of identity,
So this is what
immigration.
yeah. So this is what I have covered in one of my lectures on my channel. The
Uh-huh,
title is Separation Never Happens.
uh-huh. Yeah,
In a way, strong attachments never undo themselves. The separation never happens. They may go milder, they may be forgotten, they may be processed by defenses, but you don't undo them completely. There is no ungeneration of attachment so easy. I'm not saying never happens, but it's not easy. So in a way, and Freud also talks about it. Like Freud also talks about object loss in a different way. He says, in case of difficult object losses, the only way left to us is to use defenses and deny in different ways. And one way of denial is to identify with it and make it our own.
make it our own. Commemorialization.
That what is lost, you develop some characteristics of it. And thereby you deny that loss. And Freud actually goes on to say that quite a part of our personality is nothing but accumulation of losses.
I can see that.
That our accumulated response to accumulated losses is what constitutes quite a part of our personality. So loss is an area by itself, because you can study it in various ways, like loss of childhood, loss of adulthood, loss in one-to-one relationship, loss of a group, loss of a city, loss of a home, loss of property, loss of fame. So loss can be studied in so many ways. In fact, there is a thick volume of essential papers on object loss.
Yes, I've taken that term.
So loss is very important, and you will see in most pathology somewhere, you will see either loss or attack.
We are on our way to loss of a planet.
Loss of?
Planet.
Correct.
With all the nuclear wars raging around.
True. We hope that it shines bright and comes back to normal.
Sir.
So having seen loss, now let us go into details of attack. As I said, attack can be overt or covert. Overt attacks can be physical. It can be forced indulgence, or it can be deprivation. Covert attacks can be mirroring failure or coldness, like ignoring somebody. It's a covert attack. Going silent, covert attack. Not responding to someone, dismissing what he says, is a covert attack. Becoming cold is a covert attack. Looking somewhere else when he's talking to you is a covert attack. Not
How indulgence is overt attack?
It's very rare, but some people do. They force indulgence.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
This is what you wanted. Take it, take it, take it, like that.
and they smother you with their wishes.
Yes.
So it's a smothering attack of indulgence. Every day, look here, I have now brought a TV. I never asked you to bring a TV. No, I have brought a TV. It's a wonderful TV. Keep it in your place. And over a period of time, you realize that you are not living your desire, but you are smothered by his desire. You feel like in a golden cage. Every day, a gold biscuit is supplied to you, but you never wanted it. So that is an attack of indulgence. It's a narcissistic attack to actually capture somebody psychologically and make that person an extension of oneself. So you can, mirroring failure is related to the 5 A's if you recollect. This is something one must learn by heart. The 5 A's of Kohut, mirroring failure. The 5 A's, which you find in all the personality disorders. First, acknowledgement that I exist. I am not a furniture. When people gather together, somebody says hello to me. It's not that I sit in a corner and nobody even says hello to me and they keep talking between themselves. That's an acknowledgement crisis, acknowledgement of somebody's existence. So the first A of mirroring is acknowledgement. Second is attention. After saying hello, don't not talk to me across 2 hours. Don't do, okay, you come, you say hello and you talk with somebody for 2 hours and while again going back, you say goodbye. So beyond hello and goodbye, do say something to me, that is attention. Third is affection. Third is acceptance. Don't attack me for my features, for being myself. So third is acceptance. Fourth is affection. Show some emotional affection to me. And fifth is admiration. Admire me for my goodness. In early life, admire me also for my narcissistic exhibitionism. So that is very important, and any mirroring failure inevitably will cast a shadow on the psyche. And this can be both overt and covert. I have put it here in covert, it can be overt also.
If there are dialogues, internal dialogues to be said, when one is experiencing these mirroring failures, these attacks, wherein there is little acknowledgement, attention, acceptance, affection, or admiration, or all five, they will be useful, very useful in the treatment also. In Wikipedia, they describe something known as social defeat, which perhaps subsumes many of these criteria.
True.
Social defeat under Wikipedia is similar to this.
Yeah, one very important element of social defeat is the humiliation on
Yes.
power front.
Humiliation on?
Power front. See, if you look into low-income communities, it is very common to find men doing nothing, just sitting outside of their home on a bed and wasting their time, and the woman working somewhere to feed the family.
Yes.
It's a very common thing. Now, one of the reasons for that is that the drive for power is very strong in men. And if that drive is completely crushed to powder, it is unbearable. And men will just not enter into that space where in the hierarchy they are so down and so crushed. So they will rather get out of the game than to be in the game. no matter what the consequences. In women, the same kind of power drive is not there. So they are able to adjust more out of their emotions, affection, attachment, and responsibility. But the man, if the ego is hurt beyond a point, he will give up everything, even the responsibility. And that is what.
Sorry. Husbands dying young in marriage could be a probable, without obvious cause, could be a probable example.
It's actually somatization of a complete defeat. Okay, you try all that you can, and now there's nothing more to try. And then you don't think of solutions. There are solutions, but you are just so defeated, so sad, and so angry at the world, so deeply helpless and hopeless, you don't look for the solution.
Helplessness.
Yeah.
Helpless executive model.
It's
They
very.
won't press the bar even if it stops the shocks.
The feeling of I am done is what prevents hope from arising. Because when the trauma is deep and repeated, and the last one, like there is a lecture of mine which is titled, What is left after the last hope has left?
Right.
In that situation, when one accepts a total defeat and a total hopelessness, and you say, I am done, it's over, then one does not even search for solutions. Even that search is over. That is often the time for suicidal ideation. And if one does not do that, then it somatizes and one dies very young. Many times we commit silent suicide by somatization. Because often somatization is silent suicide. You should actually have a term for it called somatic suicide. We should actually have a term, somatic suicide.
Yes.
Attack can also be classified into one time, occasional, or repeated. You may have a man who was attacked very badly only once or twice, or who was repeatedly attacked badly, or occasionally attacked, or unpredictably attacked. All of this will produce different outcomes. No attack, rare attack, occasional attack, repeated attack, unpredictable attack. Attack can be psychological, or it may be physical, economic, or legal. Any kind of attack can be there. In your professional life, you can find people who are attacking your profession. They want to annihilate you professionally. So you will have annihilation anxiety out of professional annihilation. Fear. Very important is the attack response strength. Okay, how do you respond to an attack? Do you respond with thinking? Do you respond as a child? Or do you respond as an adult? How do you respond? The child response is, why is he doing this to me? Why can't he be good to me? He should not have said this to me. He should not have done this to me. And you keep being sad and angry and anxious inside of you for a long time. And you keep ruminating about it. Why did he do this to me? An adult will think about, okay, I'm feeling bad, but this has to go through. I have to get out of it. I might take a day or two, but I have to get out of it and start on with life. Somebody more strong will think, today you are attacking me, let my time come. I'll plan the revenge. He will not go into, why did you do this to me? I am innocent. He will say, doesn't matter who is innocent and who is not. You did this to me, now see what I do to you. So that is a very high ego strength who will start planning revenge. Instead of even going in for a couple of days of rumination and suffering. Not to talk of the most sensitive person who will be beset with it for a month. So that response maturity is very important. Okay, what is the response to the attack? Is it a child response? Is it an adult response? Or is it a very healthy response? Or is it a spiritual response? It doesn't matter what comes from outside. I have to train the inside so that I just don't get into trouble. That's more like working on the response pattern of ourselves and transforming oneself from inside. Attack is also linked to the superego because there is something which is called superego attack. Our superego attacks us. So there are various forms of self-attack. Whenever emotion which has to go to somebody is stopped and it turns back upon us, it leads to some sort of self-attack. So there can be aggression going somewhere, coming back on us, and there is a self-attack of aggression. Similarly, there is a self-attack of guilt or shame, which is a superego self-attack. So there are attacks from others and attacks from ourselves to ourselves. Like if the relationship with the parents has not been good and there is anger towards the parents, one may develop a guilt or a shame feeling for having those feelings towards one's parents. And the entire thing will be unconscious. And the nature of guilt is, okay, if you don't feel the guilt and let it go, it will punish you from inside. It will do self-sabotage in 100 ways. And that leads to variety of self-destruction. It will sabotage your career. It will not make you, not allow you to apply where it is very lucrative to apply. It will not allow you to use your potential to really get fame which you can. So you will be playing second fiddle when in fact you should be the leader. So that is the guilt component of it, the shame component of it, the superego self-attack. Self-attack will lead to self-destruction, which you see in various ways, both somatic and psychological and professional. Somatic will mean autoimmune system, autoimmune problems. It may mean repeatedly having ulcers in the mouth. It may mean allergies to certain food items. The non-somatized form will be self-sabotage in career, not aspiring to have something which your substance allows you to aspire for, as well as masochism. Masochism can also produce self-attack. Again, like in case of loss, it's very important what you experienced before attack and after attack. And when did the attack start? If the attack starts early, it's worse. If attack starts late in life, it's better. If before the attack you experience good things, it's good. After the attack, again you experience good things, it's still good. But if you have a situation where before and after attack, you only have small attacks, then it's a difficult thing. And this leads to a situation of fear of human interaction. Best example we see is avoidant personality disorder. That the attacks have been so many that in every human interaction you fear an attack. So meeting any person becomes a fearful occasion. In fact, it's an undiagnosed human phobia. That meeting anyone is anxiety provoking. That constantly the unconscious mind thinks he will attack me, he will attack me. And this becomes even more in meeting a stranger. After a few meetings, when you're sure the stranger is not attacking, you feel safe with him. But the attack is going to come unless proved otherwise. The default condition is that attack is coming. And the safe condition is exception. So attack is the rule, safety is an exception from human beings. So what happens is that this plays out worst in case of authority figures. So in the organization, one tries to avoid authority figures because one is terrified of it. One wants to avoid going out into the market and meeting strangers. So somebody will say, this sales job is not for me. To meet strangers and convince them this is the last thing I would like to do. So every meeting is laced with fear of attack. Meeting everyone is anxiety prone. And that has to happen with past experience of attack. That in the past, people have attacked you. So the same template operates that others also will attack. And there, our stature, our accomplishments, our education, everything is put aside. One just goes into that helpless infantile position. One does not think that I am so educated, I have this designation, how dare he attack me? The fear of attack activates and puts everything else in a deactivated situation. So if one may be a chartered accountant and he may be afraid to meet an insurance advisor who is just a BCom pass because he feels, what will I do if he keeps pestering me to buy a policy? He does not think I can marshal my own confidence, my masculinity and authority and tell him, okay, it's enough. I have heard it once, don't repeat it again. I have heard what you said and I have decided I will not buy it. The matter ends there. Don't repeat it and waste your time and my time. That kind of marshalling is not there. One goes into the infantile state that I have to please him and take the policy. Otherwise, he will not go and he will attack. And this happens even in every shop. You go to a shop and instead of being on a pedestal because you are a customer, you are anxious. Will he attack me? Will he scold me? And one is busy to please him. So that kind of thing where one is always anxious of attack and one is always trying to please the other or makes oneself safe, that is coming from long-term attacks in childhood. Should we go on or should we stop?
I'm game to go on.
Okay, let's complete it.
Sir.
Now, in object relations, we have three possibilities: good relations, no relations, bad relations. And people choose it differently. People with narcissistic orientation, they have a hierarchy: good relation number 1, no relation number 2, bad relation number 3. In case of dependence, the hierarchy is good relation, bad relation, no relation. Because in narcissism, the fear of attack is worse than fear of loss. Because no relation means loss, bad relations means attack. So in narcissism, the fear of attack is worse than the fear of loss. In dependence, the fear of loss is worse than the fear of attack. So a dependent will say, don't leave me. If you have to attack, be with me and attack, but don't leave me. For him, the terror of loss is more than the terror of attack.
One can find that children who are put in the rescue homes, they prefer the torture at the hands of stepmother over the indifference in the rescue home.
Correct.
Mm.
So in general, people feel loss is worse than attack.
Mm.
It's an exception that the narcissistic personality thinks attack is worse than loss. So majority will be in society, loss is worse than attack. Minority will be attack is worse than worse. Attack is worse than loss. What are the exceptions? Masochism can invite object attack. Because for masochistic person, it's pleasurable. The pleasure is entangled with attack. If what you just said, if you have a template of attack, then you want to reenact it. So the person who is in the orphanage, when he comes out of it, he will reenact it in adult life. He will choose somebody who attacks him and then complain about it. So he will come to the psychiatrist and complain that people are attacking me. The solution is very simple, leave them. That he will not do. Because loss is more terrifying than attack. Or he is masochistic.
There is joke about it. One line. Forgive me. Joke says, a patient comes and says to the analyst, everyone ignores me. Psychiatrist analyst says, next please.
Right.
Fragmentation anxiety.
Yeah. But what do they want to mean by this? Except that he is repeating it.
Uh, we
There seems to be a deeper meaning which I'm not able to cull out.
did not think about it that way. Just took it as a joke. But it coming to think of it, it means that the losses are so real for me, the rejection is so real, loss and attack, that uh, you can say I deserved it.
Ah,
And then even the analyst says, next, please.
correct.
Or somebody says, I have inferiority complex. The other one says, the doctor says, no, you don't have complex. Your
Ah,
inferiority is real.
right. There's another one about it. It says somebody told a narcissist that your narcissism is only a defense against your inferiority.
Yeah.
So he went and told everyone, I have been told that I have the greatest inferiority complex in this world. Nobody has inferiority as deep as I have.
Yeah,
So at least I'm greatest and special in that way.
absolutely.
In fact, I got a call once. This is real.
Real.
This is a real example. The person says, I want to see you. So I said, why?
I want to
I want to see you. So I said, what for?
see you.
See you.
See you. Oh, I see. What for?
What for? He says, I have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem of lying without stop. I just keep lying whole day. And I know I need therapy to cure this.
Uh,
I said, very good. Then he says, but this also is a lie.
yeah, very tricky actually for the doctor. Mm-hmm.
Anything in the range of perversion
Mm.
is very difficult. Whether we are talking of sociopathy, psychopathy, or this kind of pathological lying, anything that goes into a perversion kind of situation where one is used to refusing the castration of reality. It's very difficult. Object attack can lead to fragmentation anxiety. It's very common. People who are absolutely competent and feeling fearful at work for no reason. I mean, they are so competent, they don't have to feel fearful at work. They don't have to feel fearful when they are given a case to solve because they've done it for years, and yet that fear comes the moment some work is given, and that is because of that fear of catastrophic thinking based upon I am not good enough or object attack. There is also another aspect to it. The opposite of object loss is object gain. That you gain a good, reliable, stable object, or you gain a good object. So loss versus gain. But there's a third situation: object loss, object gain, and object freedom. So spiritually, we neither go into loss or gain much. The goal is of freedom. For a normal person, object gain is very positive. It helps him overcome object loss. But the spiritual part is object freedom. In real life, if you are saddled with a bad object, you start praying for object loss. If you are saddled with a bad wife or bad husband, you pray to God that that person goes away. Or if you are saddled with a bad boss, you pray to God he goes away and somebody else comes. So at times you actually want object loss if the object is not good enough. And I always say, okay, in some way or the other, every person is entangled somewhere. हर आदमी कहीं पे फंसा हुआ है. So I always say we should actually start a website called chutkara.com. कि इस दुनिया में हर आदमी को किसी न किसी से छुटकारा चाहिए. कोई ना कोई है जहां पे वो फंसा हुआ है.
Can object freedom also mean like there is a liberation from the uh, repetition compulsion? चौऱ्याऐंशीचा फेरा. You are actually relieved of the reincarnations.
Correct. So what happens is that if you have object loss, then first you fill it up with object gain, and then you undergo transcendence into object freedom.
I don't need any. Ideally, one should reach there. That
Correct. That we are free from this whole entanglement and problem and the whole paraphernalia of object use.
exactly.
Because it's a very enslaving thing.
Hmm.
Object loss is a very enslaving thing. That you have to do 10 compromises to keep the object in its place. Because no object is going to give you unconditional love. We are in the world of conditional objects when it comes to human beings. And it's not easy to keep the objects in their place without pleasing them to some extent. So that being the situation, avoiding object loss is a high cost operation. And that is psychologically and in general also very taxing. So it is not the avoiding object loss and having object gain, maintaining an object gain is not easy. So it's always better to move towards object freedom. And for that, one has to gain a good object, internalize it, identify with it, and then one can move it. And if one doesn't find anybody, then we take the path of idol therapy and we internalize the idol that we believe is omnipotent. So the idol becomes an omnipotent, good, reliable, stable object. And we internalize. Another exception is fear of love. Many people have a fear of love. In fact, those who are most capable of love have a fear of love. There is a lecture by me by the same title, I Fear Love. So that may come from early life experience or over a long period of time experience, that the natural desire for love is always there. But experience tells you, beware of it. Experience tells you, beware of the desire, it may come true. So that creates a fear of love. And this is true even for most people, that even when they are in love and they want to express love, they hold back a part of it. They fear going insane if they allow the whole of the love to flow out. There also the fear of love works. So the fear of love works in one, avoiding getting into love, and second, avoiding the entire flow of love to happen, because one fears insanity out of it.
Yes. There is a four-liner by Bob Marley. Uh, you say that you like sunlight, but when it shines, you open the umbrella. You say you like rain, but when it rains, you close the windows. So when you say I love you, I feel afraid.
Correct. And it also creates the fear of abandonment. It also creates the fear of responsibility. It also creates the fear of us betraying someone and not measuring up.
Yes.
There are so many fears around love that most of us find it very difficult to really go into love without any shackles. There is a fear of fusion. It's a very early life fear, a psychotic fear. But all this fear of love, fear of fusion will not allow us to really get into object gain or object relations very close. And there is a fear of unconscious bad objects in the other person or in us becoming active in closeness. So these are all the exceptions where we don't want to undo loss, or we don't want to prevent attack. Otherwise, we always want to undo object loss. We always want to not have attacks. These are exceptions. Now, just linking to it, what is the pathology? What is Klein's explanation? What is Freud's explanation? Paranoia. Let's say we take one disorder from DSM, paranoia, delusion of persecution. Klein's explanation is, it is the fear of attack of the bad object, which you attacked first and now you're afraid it will attack back. Freud's explanation will be repressed homosexuality and the whole dynamic, I love you, I hate you, I will kill you, you will kill me. Second DSM pathology, depression. Klein's explanation is its loss of the good object or internalization of the bad object. Both will lead to depression. Freud will say anger turning back on oneself or excess of death instinct will lead to depression. Also, sadness, internalized sadness developing too much will lead to depression. Pathology, mania. Klein will say gain of the omnipotent good object will make reality and dream come one, and then there is this manic expression that there is a gain of an omnipotent good object and therefore one goes manic. Freud will say Oedipal desire has come true and all the repression has lifted, the trapped libido is released and therefore the manic. In personality disorders, we find object loss and object attack very common. I have created a valley junction model of personality disorders to explain the genesis. And in most personality disorders, we see mixed representation. Now, how does therapy happen? Kleinian therapy is traditional psychoanalytic therapy. On the couch 3 to 5 days a week. Transference is where the therapy is played out. Therapy works out in a major way in transference. In terms of interpretations, the therapist talks in terms of part object, full object, attacking object, omnipotent object, envy, greed, the fantasies of devouring, engulfing, androgynous, hermaphrodite fantasies, robbing, smothering, sadistic, masochistic elements. All of these become the lexicon of therapy of Klein. Dream analysis of Klein also is different from Freud and Jung. They use ideas like part object, full object, envy, greed, the devouring mother, the engulfing mother to do dream analysis. So this is how the concepts of Klein are applied in terms of pathology, in terms of dream analysis. How does healing happen? Object relations, the best healing is real life relations. If you have real life good relations, then the early life bad relations are healed. If that does not happen, relationship with the therapist substitutes for that. And a good relation with therapist heals to some extent the earlier difficult relationship. The therapy work is classical. You revisit the past, analyze it, release the effects, and do a profound reality acceptance. And side by side, internalization of safety, internalization of a good, reliable, stable object also is on. Some role models at work are very important, who are kind and considerate and positive. Virtual relations, either online or in our fantasy, they also help us to balance difficult relationships in reality. Art, social work, and spiritual work can also help you get into good object relationships in some way. And like the whole of psychoanalysis, the Kleinian therapy also is tool deficient. Like they don't give you tools for self-work or tools even for a therapist to use in therapy. The entire psychoanalytic area is tool deficient. We never focused on tools actually. Standardized tools to be used in therapy by the therapist or for self-work by the patient. And the concept of self-work was not there because it was a 3 to 5 day therapy. Practically every day you were seeing the patient. So the self-work was actually not needed when the therapy started. Even today, the Kleinian therapy is at least 3 to 5 days. Less than 3 days, they don't even call it psychoanalytic therapy. But practically, situation is such that we have to make do with twice a week. So these are some of the books that one can refer to. One I would recommend, one lecture of mine, Profit in Object Loss. Okay, how often we long for object loss. We are saddled with a bad object, an unproductive object. Like you may have a subordinate who is good for nothing. You actually want the loss to happen. In art, you can actually have relationships you did not have in reality. In social work also, when you go out, it's very healing from relationship point of view. I always recommend NGO work to many people. It's very healing. And spiritual work also, if you're working in an ashram or something, it's very healing. So apart from relationship with the therapist, real life relationship, art, social work and spiritual work They can be very good healers in a silent way. Of course, that doesn't mean therapy is not required. Therapy is central, but these are complementary. So with this, we stop for the day. Any questions you have?
No, sir, but I will study more and then have questions likely. I don't have any worth studying. I haven't studied well enough to ask questions right now.
So what we do is next time we'll start with Wilfred Bion.
Yes. Sorry, I remembered something. Huh?
Please.
We did a cultural formulation interview, international field trial in KEM Hospital, Pune. Uh, there was a question on cultural identity in the CFI. So, out of our own initiative, we decided after the initial work was submitted that neither patients nor the psychologists or psychiatrists understood the question very clearly. What do we mean by cultural identity? So, out of our own initiative, I approached the director of the research department, Dr. Padbidri, and I said that I wish to work on this further. He said, work on a shoestring budget. So I accepted, and as usual, there are no funds for the investigator, but the assistants get some paltry sums. That was fine. So we asked what is cultural identity for if I remember right, 400 people, 200 clinic and 200 from the slum. And I combined it with depression, anxiety, stress scales because they claim that they separate anxiety and depression very well, though they can't distinguish anxiety and stress. So let us test that tool. And then I said, let us find out. I remember Dr. Vig or Neki who said that anxiety and depression are cultural biases of the West. So negative, there is a possibility that other cultures are governed by completely different emotions. So we said, we thought let us study negative emotions. And we made a list of 7 or 8 negative emotions and just asked them in that survey, in that session where DAS was administered and cultural identity questions and this negative emotions question. And we found that 80% or more said anger was the predominant negative emotion that they experienced. But all the others also came there. We did not use any tool as such. It was a cultural style interview. So subjective perception, experience and report
Right.
of the client was taken as a presence of that emotion. When I discussed that with Mitchell Weiss then, he said this is not a very well conducted study, but if you do that and if you can prove, because we were able to see the association between negative emotions and the patients, whereas in the community there were less of negative emotions.
Right.
And in clinic sample, negative emotions were much more. If
Correct.
you can prove that negative emotion is related to psychiatric illness, you will be able to publish in any journal. So if we with analysis, studying after studying psychoanalysis again, if we can actually undertake some such study together and say that let us study negative emotion, let us study ego strength, and the lack of tools, if we can do something, not exactly word by word tool, but say conceptual tool, because all of the those who are going to use it are going to be qualified mental health clinicians. So, and we work something around that, that will be great.
Yeah, I think we should do it. Just let me go through the book that I am doing, and I'll be free.
I
But
have to buy and read so many of your books and channel. It is on the agenda.
what I can add as a thought to it, which we can think over and decide, there are two broad approaches in psychoanalysis: the hydraulic approach and the non-hydraulic approach. The hydraulic approach says that sickness is primarily out of bottled up negative emotions. It's a hydraulic approach. Right from Freud till now, we have had hydraulic approaches. The second approach is of Klein, which is non-hydraulic, like internalization of a good, reliable, stable object. So in Freud, what the idea is that negative affect is bottled up in trauma. In fact, it's bottled up in an event, and the bottling up of that negative affect is what makes that event a traumatic event. And therefore, healing consists in making it conscious and releasing that affect. Right? Now, ISTDP makes a mistake. It thinks only hydraulic situation leads to problems. That only bottled up negative affect will lead to problems. But if we go in a study where we say, okay, we do a comparative between hydraulic causal entities and non-hydraulic causal entities leading to pathology. Like if we have anger, sadness, guilt, these are traditional hydraulic entities which get bottled up and cause trauma, and the idea is to release them. But if we talk of inferiority, lack of internalization of a good, reliable, stable object, these are non-hydraulic causal entities. They cause pathology, but they're not hydraulic. For example, like envy and shame are on the borderline. They appear to be non-hydraulic, but when they're experienced as if they are with some affect. Like shame, you feel like you are contracting inside. You just want to vanish. There is a withdrawal and contraction in shame. So it's felt affective, but in a distinct way, not really a kind of, it is hydraulic, but it is not hydraulic in the sense of being bottled up. Like envy is very distinct feeling of envy into itself, but usually it's accompanied by a destructive rage. But envy into itself is a very distinct feeling, and it leads to many pathologies. So in a way, we can call envy, purely speaking, as non-hydraulic. Shame we can put in between. We can even classify as hydraulic, but definitely inferiority, envy, internalization of a good, reliable, stable object, right? These are very much non-hydraulic entities. So one can do a study where one can see a relation between the hydraulic entities of psychoanalysis to pathology and non-hydraulic entities of psychoanalysis to pathology. Okay, if we measure anger and envy and see is there a relation to pathology, I think it's a good idea.
I seem to grasp whatever you are saying, though it is still a little tough for me. With hydraulic, I remember Brahma's hydraulic press in that we learnt in physics, and then it is rather easier to operationalize. Whereas inferiority and envy and what did you say?
Internalization of
The
a good object.
internalization of good object. They are more related to constitution, like you were mentioning a few slides ago, that is constitutional and it is not caused actually by interpersonal context. So there could be distinction on that front also in.
Correct. What will happen is that the theorists will say that the aggression also has a constitutional root. That the same event two people are exposed to, they will develop different amounts of anger.
Okay.
So that is one response. But what we can do is this a kind of a comparative study.
Anger and envy.
a comparative study on causation of pathology uh, in relation to hydraulic and non-hydraulic psychoanalytic factors. That kind of thing. I think
Yes,
it's
sir.
a good idea. Okay, let us see if non-hydraulic things work out, because if they do, and if they come out stronger than the hydraulic factors, because hydraulic factors, the basic idea is it's like a dam kind of situation. Okay, water is filling up, it reaches the top, and then dam overflows, symptoms start, and the way out is open the gates, allow the water to flow out, and it's the job of therapy to open the gates. It's a basic, very hydraulic model of emotions. Okay? Emotions are created, they are accumulated, and when they start or reach a particular critical point, after that the overflow, symptoms are created. And the
They
way
give,
out is release the emotions.
they give a feeling that they are essentially manageable and human being can be good. Whereas the other will let us test the death instinct hypothesis.
Correct, correct.
Kind of, we have inherent.
True. Because many people say, okay, one of the difficult things about managing envy or even healing it in therapy is it almost looks like an unadulterated evil.
Unadulterated evil.
Evil.
Uh-huh.
Almost looks like a pure evil. It's very difficult to find a sublimated form or an evolutionary rationale for it.
Evolutionary rational.
Or evil. Envy, sorry, envy. Envy. It almost looks like a pure evil.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Looking forward to. Thank you so much.